Our topic is the Trail of Tears. I'm Cassie.
I'm Grayson.
And I'm Julia. For our podcast, we chose the Trail of Tears as our topic of discussion. We wanted to focus on how the pain endured by Native American people is viewed by citizens of the United States after the passing of hundreds of years. In order to analyze this topic, we chose a painting as a primary source, and 3 articles regarding the Trail of Tears as our secondary sources. These sources are captivating and compelling, and show a mere glimpse of the horrific enforcement of Indian removal. Our goal of pursuing this topic was to better understand the effect the Trail of Tears had on the modern United States, and to look into the perspective of Native Americans that are still facing the pain of the past today. We chose this topic and these sources to help our listeners better understand this intense period of history that hurt so many people.
For our primary source, we decided to use a painting called Marching Somewhere West, created by Benny Andrews in 2005. Andrews is a Black American artist mostly known for his figurative paintings that incorporate a collage of different fabrics and other materials. He was also an activist who educated people about social justice issues, mainly through his artwork. Marching Somewhere West is one of 4 paintings in Andrews' The Trail of Tears series. In this painting, he details the Native Americans, namely the Cherokee, as they were forcefully removed from their ancestral land east of the Mississippi River to what is now present-day Oklahoma. We decided to choose this painting because we will be able to not only see how the Trail of Tears is depicted in the present day, but we will also be able to look more closely at the individuals depicted and how much they were put through during their long and brutal journey.
Because this primary source was painted in 2005, it really shows a perspective of how the Trail of Tears is viewed by Andrews over 100 years later. The Native Americans' exhausted and mournful faces show how harsh this removal was. They were forced to pack up all of their possessions and leave their homes, forced to travel throughout the night, showing that they did not get much time to sleep along their rough journey, forced to walk for miles and miles westward with a white general leading them to their new home. This shows us that the Trail of Tears was a cruel event that white Americans forced upon them. They didn't have a choice to stay in their homes.
The secondary source I chose is entitled Paying Homage to a Brutalized People. A Wagon Train Follows the Infamous Trail of Tears, and it was written by Bill Shaw and published in People magazine in 1988. This source provides information about the wagon train that embarked on the Trail of Tears exactly 150 years after the enforcement of Indian removal was in full effect. Native American descendants of ancestors who walked the Trail of Tears were present, and also people who wished to pay respects for the past, regardless of not having an ancestral connection. Both of these perspectives are so important to hear from, because it speaks volumes about the situation, but also about the way it is perceived. When I get cold and miserable, I get to thinking about what them people went through, said Ray Edgar, 54, a retired painter from Arkansas, and I don't feel so bad no more. It is moving to learn about the emotion that poured out of this event. It is clear that many people do care about the past and want to do what they can now to right it. There is still a large need for education about Indian removal for the United States, but I think more recognition for the pain Native people went through is definitely still due.
The secondary source I chose is a chapter from the Georgia Historical Quarterly called The Cherokee Trail of Tears, a sequential perspective written by Ronald N. Satz in 1989. This chapter goes into detail about the Cherokee and their struggle with the United States government throughout the Trail of Tears. Before their removal, there were constant arguments over land between the Cherokee leaders and government officials from Georgia. And when Andrew Jackson was elected as president, he sided with Georgia, which wanted more land for its own economic benefit, and he used his power to remove the Native Americans from their land. Because this happened so suddenly, the Cherokee were left with no time to prepare for the long journey ahead. They lacked the supplies and materials needed, and by the end of the journey, it was reported that roughly 1/4 of the population had died from causes such as disease, fatigue, and starvation. This estimate has recently been accused of being false, with many claiming more people died. Sadly, although the exact number may never be known, the Trail of Tears has left a powerful legacy in American history and will continue to be talked about to help educate people on the terrible mistakes made in the past.
Van Buren County in Tennessee has some of the best preserved Trail of Tears segments and campsites out of all the counties through which the trail passed through. This was talked about in a journal article called The Legacy of the Trail of Tears in Van Buren County, written by William S. Jones, published in 2004. Jones is the Van Buren County historian and the leader of the Tennessee Trail of Tears Association. Jones goes into detail on the difficult journey that the groups of Native Americans had to make. They had to march through snowstorms and cross the Cumberland Mountains. Of the 9,839 people that marched along this part of the trail, there were 357 deaths, 48 births, and 182 desertions known. This is just a small portion of the actual number of natives that died along the entire trail. Groups such as the Van Buren Historical Society, Tennessee Division of Archaeology, the Trail of Tears Association, and the National Park Service are all working together to rediscover and continue preserving many miles of the trail. It is important that we keep on trying to preserve more and more of the trail because it allows people to recognize and remember the suffering Native Americans had to go through during this time.
In conclusion, it is really important to learn about not only the past, but also to continue honoring the injustices that occurred throughout history that still impact many people's lives today. People in America whose ancestors were victims of Indian removal are continually hurt by the racism and blatant mistreatment of natives in this time period, despite the fact that it was hundreds of years ago. Many Native American communities still face issues with their identity and place in America after being removed from their own ancestral grounds and forced into places such as reservations. By learning about American citizens' recent viewpoint of the Trail of Tears and Indian removal in general, we deepen our knowledge of our country and how it was formed.